Hey everyone, we've got a massive storm developing and it's set to impact a huge part of the United States next week. This system is going to bring a mix of serious weather threats, the potential for severe storms, the return of some snowfall, dangerously high winds, and even the risk of flooding rainfall. There's a lot happening with this forecast, and over the next 7 to 10 days, many areas are going to feel the effects of this system in different ways. So in today's video, I'm going to take you through everything you need to know to stay ahead of this. And trust me, there's a lot to cover. But before we get into the details, hit the subscribe button, like this video, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for your support. Let's start by talking about what's already happening across the country. Because even before this big system arrives, we're already seeing some pretty active weather. Right now, a fairly large storm is moving into the Great Plains, but the good news is that this one isn't expected to bring much severe weather. It's also nowhere near as intense or widespread as the system we just dealt with over the last few days. That said, we'll still see some showers and thunderstorms developing as we head into tomorrow and Sunday, particularly across the southern plains and parts of the southeast. While the severe weather risk with this system is low, it's not zero, and we'll take a closer look at that in just a bit. This current system has already been bringing some snowfall to areas like Nebraska and Iowa over the past 24 hours. If you're in those areas, let me know in the comments how much snow you've seen so far. I know many parts of Iowa have been in a pretty significant snow drought this winter, so any snowfall right now stands out. Meanwhile, over on the West Coast, things have been relatively calm over the last few days. But that's about to change in a big way next week. Southern California has already seen some action with a couple of areas of rotation near San Diego just last night that came very close to warranting tornado warnings. The weather pattern is going to shift quite a bit in the coming days. And a big part of why things have been quieter lately is because of a zonal flow in the jet stream across most of the United States. That kind of pattern tends to keep things more stable. But that's not going to last. As we head into the weekend, we'll see a storm system start to push over the Rockies and into the southern plains. And that's where things start to get more interesting. Believe it or not, there's even a chance for some sneaky snowfall in parts of Texas and Oklahoma. And yes, we are talking about snow in March. It's not every day you see snowflakes falling in these areas this late in the season, but it's definitely on the table this weekend. By late Sunday and into Monday, this system is going to push into the southeast, bringing more showers and thunderstorms to states like Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina. The risk of severe weather remains low overall, but we can't completely rule out a few stronger storms. And while that system moves out early next week, things will stay relatively quiet across the country on Monday and Tuesday. But don't let that lull you into a false sense of calm, because by midweek, we're tracking a new storm moving across the Great Plains. Right now, it doesn't look like a major severe weather maker, but we could still see some isolated strong storms along with more widespread showers and thunderstorms in areas like the Ohio Valley and parts of the southeast. The real headline, though, is what's coming later in the week. By Thursday and Friday, a massive storm system is expected to develop and push off the West Coast, moving over the Rocky Mountains and eventually into the Great Plains. This is the system everyone needs to be paying attention to because it's shaping up to be an intense and potentially dangerous weather event. We're looking at heavy rain and mountain snow slamming the West Coast starting on Wednesday with states like Oregon, California, and Washington getting hit particularly hard. The higher elevations of the Rockies and the Sierra Nevada could end up seeing feet of snow by the time this system moves through. And as it pushes eastward into the plains on Friday, we're expecting widespread thunderstorms, strong winds, and the potential for more snow in the northern plains. One thing that really stands out with this system is just how powerful it could become. The current forecast models are showing pressure levels dropping as low as 974 millibars by Friday afternoon. And for March, that's almost unheard of in the United States. In fact, the last major storm we saw just a few days ago broke March barometric pressure records. And this system could end up being even stronger. That alone tells us we're looking at a very intense storm, even if the exact impacts are still coming into focus. But before we get into the details, hit the subscribe button, like this video, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for your support. Now, I want to be clear. We're not saying there's going to be a tornado outbreak or a widespread severe weather event just yet. There's still a lot of uncertainty with this forecast, and there are some factors that could limit the severe weather potential. One of the big issues is that the system is tracking pretty far north for this time of year, which means it may not have access to as much warm, unstable air. And that's a key ingredient for severe storm. Another factor is that the moisture needed for those storms would have to come from the Gulf of Mexico. And right now, that moisture is still pretty far to the south. That said, even if the severe weather risk stays limited, this system is still going to bring some pretty significant impacts. High winds are going to be one of the biggest issues, and we could see gusts hitting 50 to 60 miles per hour across parts of the Great Plains and the Midwest. Those kinds of winds can cause damage, knock out power, and make travel dangerous, even without severe storms in the mix. And while the central part of the country deals with wind and thunderstorms, the West Coast is going to continue getting drenched. We're expecting widespread rain and heavy snowfall from Oregon down through California, with some areas in the Sierra Nevada potentially picking up as much as 3 to 4 feet of snow. Temperature-wise, March is shaping up to be a real roller coaster. We'll see a pretty sharp divide across the country next week, with above average temperatures building across the Great Plains, Midwest, and Northeast, while the West Coast stays stuck with colder than normal conditions. So we could even see some record-breaking warmth in parts of the central and eastern US late next week. But that's likely to be followed by another shot of cold air moving into the Midwest and northern plains as we head into the weekend. Precipitation in the West expected to slow down somewhat as we move deeper into March, though above average rainfall and snowfall are still likely. However, the intensity of these systems may decrease slightly. The south central states will likely stay drier than normal, and the storm track we've been seeing so far is expected to persist. This will result in continued storminess beneath these strong low pressure systems. One notable pattern showing up in model guidance is the development of primary low pressure systems to the north, which often produce cold fronts that generate storms. Additionally, we're seeing signs of secondary low pressure systems forming, not as intense as the primary lows, but still creating areas of relatively low pressure that lead to columns of heavy precipitation. This setup is expected to repeat throughout March. Looking even further ahead, the newly updated 3 to 4 week temperature outlook, which covers March 22 through April 4, suggests a continuation of these trends. The western U.S. shows equal chances for above or below average temperatures, while Alaska is expected to see colder than normal conditions. This pattern hints at a continued negative PNA influence, even if the western U.S. doesn't fully reflect it. As a result, much of the central and eastern U.S., including the plains, Midwest, Great Lakes, Deep South, Southeast, Mid-Atlantic, and Northeast, will likely experience above normal temperatures through the end of March and into early April. This year's weather has been remarkable so far. We had a cold, snowy winter across much of the country, and now we're transitioning rapidly into spring. One of the frustrations of cold, snowy winters is that spring often feels delayed, sometimes dragging on into April with lingering cold. But this year, after a proper winter, spring is making an early a welcome appearance, with March already bringing warmer conditions. This fast transition feels almost perfect. One interesting aspect of the precipitation outlook is how closely it resembles a classic La Nina pattern. While there's likely some truth to this forecast, the reality on the ground has been a bit different. We've seen above average precipitation even into the deep south, while drier conditions have been more localized to the south central states. Given how far out these predictions extend, it's reasonable for forecasters to lean on established patterns, but there's a good chance this forecast could evolve as new data comes in. Over the first 7 days of March, the beginning of meteorological spring, temperatures have been colder along the southwest coast, while warmth has dominated the plains and Rockies. The east has mostly hovered near average, but that's expected to change significantly moving forward. This is just the start of March's shifting pattern, and the warmth will soon become more widespread and pronounced. Current model data shows a weaker low-pressure system over the Midwest, specifically near Missouri and Illinois, bringing scattered rain and snow showers. This system isn't particularly strong, but it's worth noting. As we move into the evening, precipitation will pick up in parts of the Four Corner states and into Texas and Oklahoma. There's even a marginal risk of severe weather in Texas and potentially parts of Oklahoma overnight. By tomorrow afternoon, this area of concern for severe weather will expand across the Gulf Coast, affecting parts of Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and surrounding areas. Snowfall will also develop over Colorado, New Mexico, and parts of the southern plains, including Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas. As the weekend progresses, these weather systems will push eastward with marginal risk of severe weather continuing into Florida and Georgia before tapering off by Monday. Next week, a new and intense system is expected to develop over the Rockies and move eastward, likely bringing heavy snowfall to higher elevations and widespread rainfall elsewhere. By Friday, this system will strengthen into a powerful low-pressure center, potentially triggering severe weather across the central U.S., including Iowa, Missouri, Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Texas, and Louisiana. As we head into mid-March, expect more dynamic weather, including potential severe storms and heavy precipitation. The pattern suggests a continuing contrast between cold shots in the west and warmth and humidity in the east, creating prime conditions for storm development. By the following week, the models hint at the formation of a stationary front over the southeast, which could lead to prolonged rainfall and thunderstorms reminiscent of setups more common later in spring and summer. While long-range forecasts always carry some uncertainty, the overall pattern points to an active and eventful March with plenty of opportunities for both snow and severe weather across different regions. As always, stay tuned for updates and be prepared for rapidly changing conditions. Thanks for watching. See you next one.